On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, who owns my house?
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Sean Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and we've also got George Curbelo of Curbelo Financial Coaching. Welcome, George.
What's up? Your financial coach is here and doing well. Thank you, sir.
So, it's funny. As we record this, we're just beyond 4th of July weekend, and I think the episode's going to come out maybe towards the end of July. But it was funny. We on the 4th of July we spent the 4th of July basically barbecuing with a bunch of friends, family, kids, friends, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But the day before, July 3rd, we went out to the beach. We spent the day at the beach.
Nice.
And I don't know, you might love this, although this kind of worries me a little bit. The entire time I'm driving out to the beach, you know what kept occurring to me?
Tell me.
George keeps saying on the podcast that you can do stuff for free and have a great time.
Hey, at least I'm influencing somehow. If you're thinking on me going to the beach, I'm doing something right. So let's go. That's great.
I'm thinking about George on the 4th of July, relaxing in the sand.
That is not weird at all.
It only costs us like $3-4 to get into the
for the parking and stuff like that
and whatnot. We went to here. If you've never been there, Honeymoon Island,
beautiful
here in Clearwater, in the Clearwater Dunedin area.
You got past the traffic? Because I feel like you still have to drive and sit in traffic for an hour before you even enter the beach.
Oh yeah, no, we sat in traffic for an hour. We got there pretty good, and then when we got within, I don't know, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile of the gate to get onto the state park, that's when traffic backed up, and it took us about an hour to get in. But it was cool. Once we got in, we parked, walked right onto the beach. There was an open area right there on the beach.
Very nice.
And so, I mean, it was a little packed, but we got some time in the sand. We got some time in the water. So, but yeah, I kept thinking to myself, George would be so proud of me.
Nice.
I figured out a way over 4th of July weekend to have fun with the family without a lot of expense.
And not giving up rent to buy fireworks and have the explosions go out there.
We bought fireworks.
Oh, there you of course.
But we didn't do them on the beach. We waited till we got home and we did them at home on.
Oh, they won't let you do that. Yeah, don't get let's not get in trouble there.
Well, and for the record, unfortunately, I live in a homeowners association that does not allow fireworks, but they do allow like the towers and the sparklers,
little sparklers and things like that.
Yeah, and as long as it doesn't shoot stuff out up in the air, we're fine.
You mean like the M80s that sound like explosions and stuff? Okay, gotcha.
So, but we were able to, and then I ended up, anyone who's been listening to the show for any length of time, I've talked about my big green eggs a couple of times, and so smoked some ribs on the 4th of July. I even had the little green egg. I got 2 green eggs, so I had the big green egg going with the ribs, and I had the little green egg going with burgers and dogs and stuff for the kids, and ate ribs for like 3 days.
Oh boy! Well, I got to get my invitation next time. I'll make sure we're there.
You've got an invitation,
and my heart medication apparently too.
There you go. So before we get too much deeper into today's episode, I do want to talk about our sponsors. I got to give our sponsors some love. So Sam Cohen owns Attorneys First Insurance. They write errors and omissions insurance for attorneys and title companies all over the country. He does have a particular focus in Florida and Texas, but Sam can write insurance anywhere. If you want to contact Sam, if you are an attorney starting up your firm, or if you've got a brand new title company, or if it's time to renew your malpractice coverage, contact Sam at attorneysfirst.com or go to his website, attorneysfirst.com. Even if you've had a claim before, Sam can probably find you coverage to protect you in case another mistake happens. So a couple of topics that we were kicking around this week for this week's episode, the title of the show, Who Owns My House? And so 2 issues keep coming up in the law firm week after week after week. And so one of them is something called partition lawsuits. And I think I've talked about partitions before on the show, but the other one that comes up is quiet title lawsuits. Gosh, and looking here at my episodes, it looks like I talked about partition way back in episode 13.
Oh, go. Lucky 13.
Lucky episode 13 talked about partition. So those are the 2 topics that keep coming up time to time here in my practice. People keep calling me to ask me about partition. People keep calling to ask me about quiet title lawsuits. So,
Well, I'm going to play the ignorant because it's probably true anyway. So you're going to have to learn at me there, buddy, because I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about in regards to partition, but I'd imagine my wife will love to hear exactly what this is, my friend. But what kind of cases are we talking about when we talk about partition then?
I was going to say, play the ignorant.
Well, I be that. Don't worry.
So basically, the way that partition comes up is if you have, like, for example, a brother and sister that own property. So mom and dad pass away, brother and sister inherit the property. And so the brother says, well, great, the house is free and clear. Let's cash it out, and I want my money. I want my inheritance. You know, I miss mom and dad terribly, but we've got this house free and clear, and I want my inheritance. Where the sister says, well, hey, cool, mom and dad own the house free and clear. I can live there for free. And so the sister wants to live there for free. The brother wants to sell it. They fight. And the example that I make to clients is, I don't know if you remember the old sitcoms where the two roommates would get into a fight over, you know, who owns what and who does what. And so they'd literally take like the electrical tape and they'd put a line down the center of the living room, and this half of the couch is mine and that half of the couch.
Different strokes. I remember that episode. It's like, okay, I got you there.
Gosh, different strokes. That's an old. Anyway.
You're welcome.
Right. Well, that doesn't work out in real life. You know, there's no way to split a house in two in real life. So a lot of times what the parties will do, one party will file a partition lawsuit. And basically what they're saying is, Judge, we can't decide on what to do with this property. Will you please split it? Now, the judge says, well, I can't split the house either.
Right.
So sell it. And so once the house gets sold, now the parties fight over the distribution. So one side will say, well, I'm entitled to, you know, so the law assumes if there's two owners, it'd be a 50-50 split of any proceeds. Or three owners, it'd be, you know, 33% each. Or four owners, a quarter each, so on and so on. So, but what the judge says is, okay, we start with that assumption of two owners who each get 50-50 of the proceeds, but the one sister will pop up and say, well, because I've been living there, I've been paying the taxes every year.
Oh, okay.
And so I should get half of the taxes reimbursed to me from my brother's 50% that he would otherwise get.
Right.
And same thing, I've been paying all the insurance and I've been paying all the mortgage payments. And then the brother will pipe up and the brother will say, well, wait a minute. You've been renting out that spare bedroom as an Airbnb for, 2 years, and the rental income from that Airbnb is $1,000 a month, and you haven't been paying me that revenue. So I deserve half of that revenue. So my 50% should go up. And so the judge will do an analysis, and your 50% goes up, and your 50% goes down, and this and this and this. And the judge finally will bang the gavel and say, okay, sister, you get 62%, and brother, you get 38%. And so when the property's sold, they have the order, the title company splits the money, and presumably brother and sister never have Thanksgiving together.
Yeah, I was about to say, my guess is that relationship is probably down the toilet already in regards to that. But let me ask this though, like what is this after, like, hey, let me offer, to buy the house. They just can't agree on, like, I'll buy your half of the property itself. And say, hey, look, I want to live here or continue to live here itself. I'll just give you the 50%. Is that we're past that at this point?
Yeah, I mean, by the time we've gotten to the lawsuit, one side or the other has sent at least one letter, probably multiple letters. There's probably been conversations about, okay, I'll buy you out for X.
Right.
If I pay you X, you give me the deed to your half of the property. That's probably gone on a lot. I've probably even written. If I'm bringing the lawsuit, I've probably written one of those types of letters to the other side, or I've written multiple of those, or there's been multiple conversations back and forth. But yeah, there is a statute in Florida, for those of you that love the statutory sites here on the show.
Come on now.
It's Chapter 64. So Chapter 64 of the Florida statutes. And for those of you that wonder, you can go online, just go to Google, type Florida statutes, and you can see the statutes for free. But there is Chapter 64 governs partition of property. There is also a lot of case law out there, so a lot of judge-made law out there that governs it. I don't believe there's any prerequisite required. I don't think you're required to send a letter that says, hey, we need to resolve this one way or the other. Obviously, it's beneficial if you do. You save on attorney's fees, you save on all that nonsense. But there's no requirement of that. But yeah, there's a statute that governs it, and at least in the cases where I'm representing the one suing, yeah, there's been a lot of correspondence to the other side before we file.
Nice. Okay. Well, that makes it a lot easier, but you're right. I think get to that point itself, the relationship, I feel bad from that perspective. It is what it is.
It always gets me, and I don't do a lot of probate. I have a really good buddy of mine that does probate. I have a couple other probate attorneys that I refer to on a consistent basis, but maybe it doesn't surprise me anymore, honestly.
You're numb to it, my friend.
But what money or the lack of money does to people.
Yeah, that's it.
Because, when mom and dad are alive, everybody's, and I even think, my sister and I are really good friends, and I would assume that we would be that way forever. But, when mom and dad go, there's a sizable inheritance there waiting for us. I assume we're going to split it in some 50-50 capacity.
Wouldn't you think, this is where, again, I would put this on your parents itself, have a will, make sure, because a lot of people, we assume, hey, family is going to be stronger and everything's going to be great and, everybody will split the proceeds. But you're right, money, dude, it just changes the dynamic itself. And people just get, I don't want to say crazy, but it just changes how we view, how we manage, especially if, let's say I'm in this desperate situation and all of a sudden it's wow, windfall. We've talked about windfall in the past.
Right.
You get to the point where it's no, I got to get as much as I can from this situation, even if it's your parents are not here. It's kind of sucks. But at the same time, first thing we think about, it's okay, money. So for me, it's let's have the will in place. Let's make sure we have things in place where, what we want as parents, are we don't have to have people who are grieving. Everything is already set up and allowed for them to kind of grieve, but at the same time, there's no fighting in regards to where the money goes or what we do with the money, or
Although you'd be surprised, we should probably have a probate attorney on the show here soon. You'd be surprised. A lot of times, even with a will, one sibling or some family member or whatever, no, that will's not valid.
Right.
I've actually got a case, a partition lawsuit right now, ironically, where one side is saying, my client is saying, but mom said she wanted me to be able to live in the house. And I said, well, I get it.
Saying is different from
But the document that we're fighting over here says you got to sell it. So there's that dynamic going on there as well. And again, I don't want to go too far in the weeds. We're not really a probate show, but yeah, have a will. If not a will, at least a trust.
Right.
Talk to an attorney. Give me a buzz if you have questions about your estate or your estate planning. I probably can't answer them, but I got a guy. I got attorney friends who can help you with that. We're even the couple that my wife and I wanted our kids to go to in the event that something happened to both me and my wife at the same time. They ended up getting divorced. And so we're like, well, we're not going to send our kids there. That would be interesting. One gets one kid, the other gets the other kid. So we've actually got to change our wills because we have to change the couple that the kids go to if something happens to both of us at the same time. So we're going through that now. And going back to the point we were making before, I represented a client that was being sued by his brother. And I think of my boys, and I think, gosh, what has to happen in that relationship for one brother to, they get into fights, they're brothers.
Yeah, of course.
But what has to happen to get to the point that there's a lawsuit involved?
There's something there, obviously they've never had conversations. There's always something in that. I think of it like me and my sister as well. It's I don't think I've ever we can't talk or we can't make we probably have difference in opinions on how to deal with things, but I don't think I've ever get to a point where it's I'm suing you because I need to get custody of this, or even when we had our situation with our mom, it's a tough conversation in regards to the care and how to deal with her money, because we were, again, point of attorney for her, power of attorney, excuse me, because you could tell my law degree is still in the mail. So, but little things like that, it's hard conversations, but never got to a point where it's we disagree. I can't believe we're not talking anymore. No, you're right. There's something obviously before that drives you to the point where it's I don't trust, or we can't have this conversation, or again, my feelings, my stuff is more important than yours. So there's something else there. But
I think, unfortunately, I think it always comes down to money.
Yep.
Again, even going back to my own personal situation, I was on a friend's podcast, the Show Up Show. For those of you that want to check it out, Debbie Pace does the Show Up Show, and she had me as a guest on her podcast. And we were talking about how the old law firm that I was with, shut down, and that planted the seeds for Yesner Law. But even that situation, when I split with my law partners, it was all over money.
Yep.
that was the root cause of why me and my law partners split. Is there was a disagreement, and it was related to money.
Yep.
So it's just maybe as a bankruptcy attorney, as somebody who sees people sort of at their lowest point, I've kind of been
I think
desensitized to a
yeah,
lot
and that's
of
the thing. I mean, you know, anything dealing with money itself, you're going to see there's an emotional, and that's one thing we should all learn. There's an emotional tie to how we deal with our finances. As much as we'd like to think, I mean, we do impulse buying, that's an emotion, right? We get angry, there's frustration, there's fear. All of those emotions, they tie into it itself. So, I mean, hey, I'm not saying money is a bad thing itself, but we do, put some emotions behind that kind of statement as well. So, yeah, calm down. It's all good. It's all good, guys.
It'll be okay.
It'll be all right.
It'll be okay. So if you're having problems with your siblings, don't come to me. But if it's actually, and I do have a friend of mine who's a therapist, so I can even refer you that way. But
that's probably where you should go first.
Probably. But to sort of bring it back full circle, we've done a lot of partition lawsuits lately, both for plaintiffs and for defendants, both for the sibling or the owner that says, I want to sell this house, and we've also helped defend on behalf of the person that says, no, I want to keep the house. Now, there's not really a defense there. There aren't too many things we can do to stop that. But what we can do is negotiate with the other side to try to get a different split of the money.
Right.
And sometimes I had this happen in one case where the split of the money was so extreme that once the house was sold, the one party, my client, was going to end up getting more than 100% of the proceeds. When you looked at what my client had spent in taxes, insurance, mortgage payments, improvements, all the different factors that get taken into account, and I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but let's assume it was like $200,000 of proceeds. And so you start and you say, well, each side's going to get $100,000. Well, my client spent like $300,000 over the course of being in this house or something. Right. Mm-hmm. So my client said, well, great, I spent $300,000, so I'm going to get, if we split those expenses, I would get $150. But there's only $100 going to each side. So guess what, other side? Not only am I going to get your $100, but you're going to owe me $50,000. And we fought about that for a little bit, and we ended up settling it, where I think my client paid a few bucks, and the other party just titled the house over to my client. But those are the types of disputes that you get into in partition lawsuits. And for whatever reason, maybe because houses are going up in value, we're although they've kind of cooled off now.
I mean, we're not going to be this skyrocketing and soaring prices itself. I think the fever pitch is starting to kind of go down a little bit, which is good. But the prices are still, I mean, hey, it's Florida, man. There's just craziness when it comes to the housing market out here and the prices and obviously even, things like insurance. So there's just so much that's happening now.
Yeah, we live where you vacation.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. So anyway, that's basically what a partition lawsuit is.
Nice. Well, I mean, you did mention quiet title.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna say it's well, why don't you do it? I don't want to take all of the credit here for what a quiet title is. But what is that all about, my friend?
Quiet title is when you sell real estate, but you do it really quietly.
All right, this guy. Come on now.
I'm kidding. So, quiet title lawsuit is basically when somebody disputes the ownership of the house. So somebody says, no, that house is really mine. I really own it. And a lot of times the way that comes up is you got to go back 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 owners. A lot of times maybe there's a probate involved or a tax deed or a something involved where somebody pops up out of the blue and says, I should own that house because if you go back X number of owners and then bring it forward. A lot of people used to use quiet titles in foreclosure lawsuits, and they would say, well, bank, you took the note and you split the note and the mortgage went over to mortgage electronic registration systems and blah, blah. I know I'm getting a little complicated, but the point there is I don't think those arguments really work anymore. So someone interested in a quiet title for purposes of trying to beat a mortgage foreclosure, I don't think that happens anymore. Really, the main type of quiet title, we're working on one now. It's a platted piece of property, meaning, a plat where the neighborhood is lot 1 of block 2,
right?
And it's a big map of what the neighborhood is. Well, just north of the area that encompasses the neighborhood is this little piece of land. It's this little, like the size of one of the lots.
Okay.
And it's just sort of off to the side of the map that is the plat.
Okay.
At one point, that little piece of property was contained within the legal description of the entire thing. But at some point, that little piece of property got carved out. And so our guy, who's now selling this whole huge platted piece of property, said, wait a minute, how did that little piece of property get split off, get broken off? And so we're doing a quiet title lawsuit. And we had to do research within the chain of title, but we're doing a quiet title lawsuit to say, hey, judge, I think it was like in the 1920s or some craziness.
Right.
That little sliver was sort of kept off the property accidentally, but should have been included. So please include it now. And if we win the lawsuit, that piece of property becomes part of the bigger piece and gets sold with everything else. But we've got to pull chain of title. We've got to review all that stuff. We've got to make the argument to the judge. Sometimes they can get really complicated if there's dead people in the chain of title. It can get kind of complex. Although the interesting thing about if there's dead people in the chain of title, there's nobody really to argue.
They're not going to argue back.
Right. They're not going to argue, no, we're really
But
entitled.
if it's like family members, I mean, of those dead individuals, does that come into play as well?
It could be, but for the most part, the family members don't know enough about the situation.
That's what it is. Okay.
In the majority of these types of cases that we handle, nobody really ever pops up and contests it.
Okay.
The other way that I get a ton of quiet title lawsuits is with tax deeds. So what a lot of people don't understand, when somebody buys a tax deed, when somebody buys property for unpaid taxes, taxes trump everything. They trump mortgages, they trump liens, they trump everything.
You mean the IRS will get their piece more?
Well, so the IRS can. I'm talking about the property tax collector.
The property,
like,
gotcha.
Like Hillsborough County, Pinellas County.
Gotcha, the local, gotcha.
But yeah, the IRS is kind of way up there in priority as well. But what Florida has a statute that says if you acquire title by tax deed, the previous owners, the banks, all these people that presumably should have gotten notice about the tax deed itself, they have a statute of limitations of 4 years to contest the quiet title lawsuit.
Okay.
So if I buy property through a tax deed sale, I've got one of two options. I've got to wait 4 years, meaning I've got to rent it out for 4 years and collect rental income on it for 4 years. And if I can do that and nobody makes any claims to it in the 4 years, now I own it outright. I can sell it. I can do whatever I want. Or if I want to sell it, but the buyer says I want title insurance when I buy it, then the buyer or seller or both hire me to do a quiet title lawsuit to basically sue the bank, the previous owner, anybody who might have a lien interest in the property. And the lawsuit basically says, hey, you guys got eliminated by this tax deed sale unless, speak now or forever hold
Right.
your peace kind of thing.
You get your opportunity.
Right. And if we can get that order out of the judge that says, yeah, the tax sale was proper, the person that bought it at the tax sale really owns it, if we can get that order out of the judge, then our investor client that bought that property can then immediately sell it. They don't have to wait the 4 years. The issue is the tax title is good. So if I take title by tax deed, I own it. Even if somebody pops up and says, no, I really do own it, I could probably successfully defend that lawsuit.
Right.
The title insurance companies won't issue title insurance unless the title is more than 4 years old. I got the property more than 4 years ago, or I have this quiet title judgment. So I could get a piece of property and sell it to you immediately without the 4-year statute of limitations running. You can't get title insurance on it without the 4 years running or without me getting the quiet title.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
So that's why it is still what we call marketable title, but it's not insurable title. I can't get title insurance on it, but I can sell it. I just can't get title insurance on it.
I see. So there's no protection. That's the risk that I run. If I buy it from you itself, that's the risk I run. I can't get, title insurance. I could get sued. I can, any of those kind of things could pop up within that limit of the statute of limitation itself. Gotcha.
Within that 4-year statute of limitations.
Gotcha.
And we've got a lot of clients that are buying at tax deed sales and doing quiet title lawsuits and getting the title insurance. And
mean, do you see that more like in Florida, certain parts of the country itself, like with the older homes, different types of homes itself? Like
I'm only licensed in Florida, so I only do.
Oh, I see. Well,
Florida.
let's stay in Florida then.
I honestly, I really don't know. That's kind of a good question. I mean, I do know that there are a lot of the quote gurus out there. I mean, that was really my first exposure to real estate investing. Was all these guys out there that are saying, yeah, for $100
Yeah, exactly.
you can own. They were talking about tax deeds.
Ah,
That's because, I mean, if you look, property taxes, $200,000 house, the property taxes are somewhere in the range of $1,500 to $2,000,
Right.
give or take. I've got a house. I saw a friend of mine. We were doing a sale. His house, he was selling it for like $650,000, and his property tax bill was only like $5,000.
wow.
If I can pick up a $650,000 house for $5,000, if I can pick up a $200,000 house for $1,300,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
so that's what all those gurus were pushing at the time.
Ah, there you go. That's we got learned again.
Yeah. The problem is when it's vacant land. Now you can't wait. You can't rent it out for
Right.
4 years. So you've got to do the quiet title in order to be able to flip it.
Nice. There's no way people would know those kind of things. Like, what would I, if I go in, doing these kind of things itself, what am I looking for itself? Like, how would I know to do any of these things? That's the problem I'd look into.
What a lot of investors do. So the interesting thing about tax deeds is that, at least in Florida, the first thing that happens is a tax certificate. So I don't pay my property taxes. We're in 2022. So if I didn't pay my 2021 property taxes, the tax certificates go on sale May, June-ish timeframe. And what you're really bidding on is the interest rate. So you'll say, I'll buy those taxes. I'll pay those unpaid taxes, and I think it starts at like 18%. I want 18% on my money. The investors actually bid it down. So the next investor says, well, I'll pay the taxes, but I only want 16% on my money.
Okay.
And the next one says, well, I'll pay the taxes, but I only want 12% on my money. And it bids down. It ends somewhere in the range of 6 to 8%, I think, is where it ends up. And so if I pay $3,000 to pay these unpaid taxes, and I win the bid at 6%,
Right.
I know that I'm at least going to get 6% on my money. Now, I have to hold that certificate for 2 years. So if I don't pay my 2021 taxes, someone buys the certificate in 2022, and then they have to wait until 2024 to apply for the tax deed. So as that tax deed investor, I know a couple of things. Either I'm going to get my money back at 6% interest, or whatever the winning interest bid is. I'm going to get my money back at 6% interest, or I'm going to get the property. Or you come in as the person who's bidding on the tax deeds, and you say, okay, Mr. Certificate Holder,
Right.
here's the $3,000 plus the 6%, give me the property. And so those are the two ways. So tax deeds, really, I don't think they're a bad investment, because you're going
Right.
to get some interest rate on your money. And typically it's a lot better than what you would get in a CD or a money market or something like that.
What are you talking about? 0.0001 is an amazing investment. What are you talking about?
Versus like 6. So that's a lot of times how the tax deeds work. You're at least going to get some money back plus interest, or you're going to get the property. The problem becomes, I've seen situations where the property is in such bad shape.
I can imagine. Right.
Even the certificate holder is like, I don't want
good.
Even for $3,000, I don't want to deal with that
Right.
nonsense. And so they'll just let it go. And then the other issue is, if somebody hasn't paid, for example, I use 2021 as the example, chances are when 2022 comes around, they're not going to pay that either. 2023 comes around, they're not going to pay that either. 2024 comes around, they're not going to pay that either. And so if I win the tax deed in 2024 because I held the certificate for 2021, I still have to pay the taxes for 22, 23, and 24 if I want to keep the property.
Right. Gotcha.
Now, again, if it's...
Well, I mean, technically you should if that's
Yeah.
the case. But
and if it's $2-3 grand a year,
Right.
and I picked up a property for $200,000, who cares?
Right.
So That's how quiet titles and tax deeds work.
Damn, this guy. So I just want to say two things itself. Definitely, who owns your house? That's one question. But I just want to say, Sean said it with a straight face, guys. Interesting thing about tax deeds. That's what he started this conversation on. So I just wanted to give you that kind of analysis here.
When you live in that world, it can get kind of interesting. I will tell you that.
Nah, it's all good, man.
Let's kind of bring this episode to a close, and I do have to mention our second sponsor, Mark Purvis. Mark is the guy who makes us sound great. We really don't sound like this. If you ever come and watch us in studio,
it's a lot of auto-tuning.
Our voices are cracking. We're going through puberty. It's nuts. But Mark makes us sound really, really good. He actually he edits out the spaces. He edits out the ums, the ahs. We had a guest once that said, hey, I talked about X. Can you edit that out? He did that for us.
Nice.
So that's Mark. He has another project called LegacySpotlight.com, and that's for those people that want to record their family's stories. So do you want to record stories for the younger generations in your family? Do you want to record the older generations in your family to give that knowledge to the younger generations? LegacySpotlight.com. Mark will make it fun. He'll make it fun for the family. He'll come out there with his video equipment. He'll get everybody set up. It'll be a great time, and you'll be able to capture those memories, those stories, those, how did grandma and grandpa meet kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love it.
So Mark will help you capture that. Go to LegacySpotlight.com. But again, I think we're basically at the end of this week's episode.
I think we are, my friend. I've drank all my water, and I think I'm good to go.
There you go. So if you want to contact me, Sean at yesnerlaw.com. If you want to contact George, GCFinancialCoach21 at gmail.com. All that'll be in the show notes, yep. But I think that'll do it for this week's episode.
Thank you, sir. I definitely feel like my law degree coming in the mail is well worth it. But I appreciate you as always, my friend.
The law degree from the Cracker Jack box,
or that with the decoder ring. That's what I need.
Or the University of Florida. So we hope that at the end of the month you have more money, rather than at the end of the money you have more month. Football season's coming up. It's never too late to bash the Gators, and we will catch you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Sean or connect with us on social media. Sean Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.